Oprah's Forbidden Secret. The Power Behind Her Empire revealed. Chapter 1. Uncharted waters. The soft hum of the newsroom gradually faded as Clara tuned into her own world. Her editor had just placed a file on her desk. Profile Oprah. Deadline in 2 weeks, the note attached said. To many, this would be a career-making assignment. Yet Clara's initial excitement was quickly replaced by a bubbling curiosity, a yearning to go beyond the typical accolades and known trivia. She began by diving into the archives, articles from the beginning of Oprah's career, hoping to find a unique angle. Hours turned into days, and just when Clara was about to give up, she stumbled upon a worn-out magazine from the 80s, which carried a rather curious article titled, "The Unseen Power Behind Oprah." Skimming the piece, she was struck by how it veered away from standard fare, hinting at a mystical entity aiding Oprah's early career. Intrigued, Clara went deeper, searching for the journalist who had written the article. The trail led her to a now-defunct tabloid and a name, Gerald Keaton, known for his investigative pieces on the paranormal. The decision to reach out to him was spontaneous. One moment she was contemplating the idea, and the next she found herself in a dimly lit cafe, staring at a gaunt old man with piercing blue eyes, sipping on black coffee. "You're chasing shadows," Gerald rasped, scrutinizing Clara intently. "I'm just looking for a unique angle," Clara responded, trying to keep her voice steady. Gerald leaned in, lowering his voice. "I'll tell you this. Some forces don't want to be known. They lurk in the shadows, happy to be the unseen hand." Before Clara could press further, he stood up, leaving a folded piece of paper on the table. "Good luck," he said, disappearing into the crowd. Clara unfolded the note to find a list of names, dates, and one phrase circled in red, a spectral sprite. The next morning, her workspace was in disarray. Articles scattered everywhere, sticky notes removed from her board, and in the center of the chaos, a single black feather. Pinned underneath it was a note, its handwriting elegant yet chilling. "Some secrets are best left hidden." Clara's heart raced. The room felt colder, and the distant hum of the newsroom seemed far away. She thought of dismissing it all as a prank, but the weight in the air was palpable. Compelled by a mix of fear and determination, Clara made her choice. She would find out the truth about the mysterious spectral sprite. What she didn't know then was how deep these uncharted waters ran and how turbulent the journey ahead would be. Chapter 2. Whispers in the dark. Clara's quest for the enigmatic spectral sprite led her down a trail of whispered conversations in dimly lit alleys and clandestine meetings in forgotten corners of the city. One name kept surfacing in her investigations: Max, a reclusive insider from the early days of television. With a reputation for knowing things that others didn't, he was the perfect lead. A dingy bar, known only to locals, was the chosen rendezvous point. The low hum of conversations mixed with the clinking of glasses provided an oddly comforting backdrop to what was about to unfold. Max, a frail-looking man with graying hair, sat alone in a booth at the far end. As Clara approached, he signaled for her to sit. His eyes darted around the room before he leaned in, voice barely audible. "You shouldn't be delving into this." "I need to know," Clara replied, determination evident in her voice. He sighed. "A spectral sprite isn't just a myth. It's old, ancient even. It thrives on spoken words, feeding on the energy they produce. In return, it grants charisma, influence. It's how it ensures its survival, by aligning itself with those who can spread words far and wide. And Oprah? Clara questioned. Max's eyes widened. I've said too much. You need to be careful. There are those who do anything to protect this secret. Before Clara could probe further, Max swiftly exited the bar, leaving her with more questions than answers. Frustration and fear wrestled within her, but she was not about to let this trail go cold. The list Gerald had given her had another intriguing name: Madame Vega, known spiritualist, rumored to possess vast knowledge of ancient entities. Without wasting a moment, Clara made her way to the address associated with the name. The house was unlike any other on the block. Old, yet majestic. Ivy snaked its way around the stone facade, and the air was thick with the scent of burning sage. Hesitantly, Clara knocked. The door was answered by a woman whose age was difficult to discern. Her eyes, deep pools of wisdom, seemed to look right through Clara. You seek answers, Madame Vega stated more than asked. I want to know about a spectral sprite, Clara declared. Madame Vega led her to a room filled with burning candles, crystals, and ancient manuscripts. Sit, she instructed. A spectral sprite, she began, her voice a melodic trance, is as old as communication itself. Born from humanity's first words, it realized that its existence depended on being spoken about, on being known. Yet, direct knowledge about it was dangerous. So, it intertwined its essence with storytellers, orators, and later, people of influence. She looked Clara dead in the eyes. With its power comes unparalleled influence. But the sprite is fickle. It demands a balance. For every peak, there's a trough. For every success, a failure. It's a symbiotic relationship, but one where the scales can tip, disastrously. Chills ran down Clara's spine. Why hasn't anyone exposed it? Madame Vega smirked. Would you give up unmatched power just because of a few setbacks? Besides, the sprite protects its own. Exposure is discouraged. But it's not invincible? Clara asked, catching onto a nuance in Madame Vega's words. The old spiritualist hesitated, then whispered, there are old rituals, forgotten by most. But remember, confronting such a force comes with risks. As Clara left the house, the weight of Madame Vega's words hung heavy on her. The allure of the sprite, the promise of influence was tantalizing, but at what cost? The double-edged nature of the muse was becoming clearer, and Clara realized that she was no longer just chasing a story. She was unraveling a dangerous enigma. Chapter 3. The confrontation. The sun cast golden hues over the city as Clara made her way to Oprah's mansion. With every step, her heart raced faster, not just from anticipation but also from the gravity of confronting someone of Oprah's stature. Her credentials as a journalist got her through the gate, and soon she was led into a vast study, its walls lined with awards, books, and mementos. There, amidst the grandeur, sat Oprah, exuding an aura of calm authority. Clara, she greeted, her voice gentle. To what do I owe this surprise? Taking a deep breath, Clara began. I've been investigating the mysterious force behind your success. The spectral sprite. For a split second, Clara caught a flicker of something in Oprah's eyes. Alarm? Recognition? But it was gone as swiftly as it appeared. I've no idea what you're talking about, Oprah responded evenly. Clara, expecting this, pulled out a folder, laying out articles, testimonies, and a lineage of influential people throughout history with uncanny parallels in their lives, all hinting towards the influence of the sprite. Oprah glanced over them and then met Clara's gaze. "So, you found it. The thread that ties it all. But understand, Clara, not all power is as it seems." Realizing denial was futile, Oprah sighed and began, "Yes, the Spectral sprite has been with me. It came to me at a time when I needed it the most. I was young, hungry for success, and it offered an irresistible allure. The influence, the charm, the power to reach millions. But it's not without its price." She continued, "For every accolade, there was a struggle. For every joy, a heartache. The sprite ensures a balance. It gives, but it takes too. And when it takes hard. Clara, her ambition making her bolder, challenged, but isn't that the cost of greatness? A price worth paying?" Oprah, looking older and wearier than before, replied, "There are nights when I lay awake, wondering if I'd make the same choice again. It's a heavy burden, Clara. Once you invite it in, there's no going back. But what if I'm willing to risk it?" Clara's voice was unwavering. Oprah studied her for a long moment, the weight of decades of experiences reflecting in her eyes. "You remind me of a younger me. Hungry, driven, unafraid. But let me be clear, this is not a game. And once you're in deep." "I understand the risks," Clara asserted, the allure of unmatched influence pulling her in. After a tense silence, Oprah finally nodded. "Very well. If this is the path you choose, I'll help you. But remember, I warned you." The atmosphere in the room changed, becoming charged. Oprah began to chant in an ancient tongue. The very air seemed to shimmer, and from the shadows, a ghostly form began to emerge, its presence ethereal, yet overwhelming. Clara felt a rush of energy, a heady mix of exhilaration and terror. The sprite, now visible, hovered between the two women, as if assessing its new potential host. The room grew colder, and the very walls seemed to pulse with an ancient rhythm. The transfer was complete. Oprah, looking drained but relieved, whispered, "It's done. Use its power wisely, Clara. And remember, balance is the key." As Clara left the mansion, the weight of what transpired bore down on her. She was now tethered to one of the most potent forces in existence. The path ahead was unknown, filled with promises of greatness and threats of despair. And the journey had only just begun. Chapter 4. Rise to stardom. The days following the transfer ritual were nothing short of a whirlwind for Clara. Articles she wrote, once buried in the middle pages of magazines, now made headlines. Her insights, interviews, and exposes became the talk of the town, and every word she penned was shared, discussed, and analyzed. Major publications vied for exclusives, and her inbox was flooded with lucrative offers. Clara, with the Spectral sprite's influence pulsing through her, knew exactly which opportunities to seize. She signed a major contract with a leading network, launching her show titled Clara Unveiled. The show was an instant hit. From candid celebrity interviews to deep dives into societal issues, Clara's touch turned everything to gold. Her ratings skyrocketed, and in a short span, she was rivaling, if not surpassing, Oprah's viewership. It wasn't just her professional life that was booming. Clara became a sensation. Award shows, galas, red carpets, she was everywhere. Magazine covers bore her face, and billboards with her larger-than-life image dotted the city. The allure of a spectro sprite was evident. Clara was unstoppable. However, as her stardom shone brighter, peculiar events started to occur. It began subtly. An unexplained cold draft in her upscale apartment, whispers when no one was around, shadows moving just at the edge of her vision. Initially dismissing them as the byproducts of her exhausting schedule and perhaps too little sleep, she soon realized there was more at play. One evening, while working late on a piece, her computer screen flickered, and words typed themselves. "Balance is the key." The same phrase Oprah had uttered. Then, there were the dreams. Vivid, haunting. Clara found herself in vast empty landscapes with a massive scale in the center. On one side lay all her achievements, while the other held shadowy figures, representing her yet-to-come tribulations. The scale constantly teetered, never settling. Her personal relationships began to strain. Friends mentioned she wasn't the same, often seeming distant or preoccupied. There were murmurs in her professional circles, too. For every groundbreaking interview she conducted, there were technical glitches that couldn't be explained. For every high-profile guest on her show, there were inexplicable cancellations. And then there was the incident during a live broadcast. Clara, in the middle of an intense dialogue, suddenly froze. Her eyes glazed over, and for a solid minute, she stared blankly, the studio falling into a hushed silence. She snapped out of it, disoriented, but quickly regained composure. The episode was dismissed as exhaustion, but Clara knew better. One evening, as she was leaving her studio, a shadowy figure approached her. It was Max, the insider she had met early in her investigation. "The sprite demands balance," he whispered, eyes filled with genuine concern. "For all it gives, it will take. Be prepared." Clara, shaken but still driven by ambition, nodded. "I knew the risks," she replied. But deep down, the weight of Max's words, the strange occurrences, and her own dreams made her question, was the price of unmatched influence truly worth the shadows that now clouded her life? Chapter 5. Shadows of doubt as the days turned into weeks. The once indomitable force that was Clara began to wane. Every morning she would look in the mirror, expecting to see the confident, up-and-coming journalist that she once was, but instead, she found a weary, pale reflection staring back. Dark circles framed her once vibrant eyes, and there was a tremor in her hands that she couldn't control. At work, her decline was becoming evident. Articles she'd once whip up in mere hours now took days, plagued with errors and inconsistencies. The tight-knit team she had built began to fracture. Whispers and concerned glances were exchanged among the crew. They missed the old Clara, the one whose passion was infectious. Now, they tiptoed around her, fearful of the unpredictable mood swings that came without warning. The visions that had once been relegated to her dreams began to blur into her waking life. While on set, the bright studio lights would sometimes flicker, plunging the room into darkness. In those brief moments, Clara would see nightmarish figures, lurking just beyond her reach. Whispered voices, too soft to discern but too persistent to ignore, filled her ears. And then, there were the blackouts. Moments, hours, sometimes even whole days were missing from her memory. Entire interviews conducted, articles written, events attended, all vanished from her recollection. It was as though someone was erasing parts of her life. Amidst this chaos, Clara received an unmarked envelope at her residence. Inside was a single, elegantly scripted note. The sprite thrives on chaos. You are its feast. Beware. Clara's heart raced as she read the note. The weight of her decisions, the warnings from Oprah, Max's cryptic words, all began to close in on her. Desperation took hold, and she sought solace in therapists, spiritual healers, and even exorcists, but none could provide answers or relief. One particularly harrowing night, she was jolted awake by a sharp pain in her arm. Looking down, she saw words being etched into her skin as if by an invisible hand. Balance must be restored. The pain was unbearable, but even after the etching stopped, the weight of the message pressed on her mind. In her deteriorating state, she did what felt most natural. She turned to her craft. Typing fervently, Clara penned a raw, heart-wrenching piece detailing her experiences, the meteoric rise, the haunting visions, and the terrible cost of the power she'd wielded. She didn't write for her readers or for fame, but as a lifeline, clinging to the hope that putting words to her ordeal would provide some clarity. The article, aptly titled, "The Price of Power," was an overnight sensation. But more than its virality, it acted as a beacon. Responses poured in from individuals who had faced similar experiences, others who had danced too close to forces they didn't understand, and most importantly, from those who offered help. Among those responses was a message from Madame Vega, the spiritualist who had once told Clara about a spectral sprite. Her message was brief: meet me. We must restore the balance. Hope, however faint, gleamed on the horizon. Clara realized she couldn't face the sprite alone. The next chapter of her life would involve not just confronting the muse but finding a way to coexist or, if possible, break free entirely. Chapter 6. Desperation. The weight of Madame Vega's message was not lost on Clara. She quickly dialed the number she had for the spiritualist, but the line went straight to voicemail. Over the next few days, every attempt to contact Vega was met with silence. Clara even ventured to the old, ornate building where she'd first met the spiritualist. The once warm parlor, filled with the scent of incense and old books, was now cold and empty. A thick layer of dust had settled, and a sign on the door read, "Closed indefinitely." Clara's heart sank. Of all the people who might have answers, Madame Vega was at the top of the list. Without her guidance, the weight of the spectral sprite's influence felt insurmountable. Professionally, Clara's star continued its ascent. Every article, every broadcast seemed to further cement her as the reigning queen of journalism. The public was enamored, but behind closed doors, a storm was brewing. Friends and colleagues noticed her increasingly erratic behavior, from her unpredictable moods to her sudden and unexplained absences. One evening, after a particularly intense broadcast, Clara's longtime friend and producer, Lena, pulled her aside. "Clara," she began, her voice trembling with concern, "what's happening to you? This isn't you. You're slipping away from us." Clara, eyes rimmed with red, responded in a hushed tone. "Lena, there's something I've done. Something I can't undo." Lena, ever the pillar of strength, took Clara's hands in hers. "Tell me. Maybe together, we can find a way out." Over a pot of tea, in the dim light of Clara's apartment, the journalist shared her tale. From her initial suspicions about Oprah to the fateful transfer of the spectral sprite, she laid it all out. Lena listened, disbelief giving way to dawning realization. I thought I could control it," Clara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "But it's consuming me." Lena squeezed her hand. "We'll find a way," she assured, though uncertainty clouded her eyes. Driven by desperation, Clara threw herself into research. Night after night, she pored over ancient texts, obscure forums, and tales of others who had encountered entities like the sprite. But every story seemed to end in tragedy, and no solution presented itself. In her heart, Clara knew there was one person who might have the answers she sought: Oprah. With a heavy sigh, she picked up the phone, dialing the number she'd been given during their last encounter. Oprah answered on the second ring. "Clara," she said, a note of sadness in her voice. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you." I need help," Clara stammered. "I thought I could handle the sprite, but it's too much." There was a long pause. "I warned you," Oprah replied softly. "But I understand. Meet me tomorrow, at sunset. There's a place, a grove, where we first met. I'll be there." As Clara hung up, a mix of hope and fear welled up inside her. The road ahead was uncertain, but she was no longer walking it alone. Chapter 7. Oprah's Past. The sun hung low in the sky, casting the grove in a soft, golden hue. As Clara approached, she saw Oprah, looking contemplative, sitting on an old stone bench, surrounded by ancient trees that had stood witness to countless secrets. "Thank you for coming," Oprah began, her voice carrying a weight of years and experiences. She gestured for Clara to sit. "Before we discuss the present, you need to understand the past." The world around them seemed to shimmer, and suddenly, Clara found herself transported to another time. The Chicago streets buzzed with energy, and a young Oprah, determination in her eyes, hustled amidst the bustling crowd. As a young reporter, Oprah was hungry for stories that resonated, tales that could touch souls. One evening, while covering a local story about spiritual rituals, she encountered a presence, a force that felt both ancient and potent. The Spectral sprite had found its new muse. The influence of the sprite was immediate. Oprah's interviews became legendary. Her shows were unparalleled in depth and emotion, and her name soon became synonymous with authentic storytelling. The world was spellbound. But the sprite's touch wasn't limited to her career. Oprah's personal life began to bear the brunt of the muse's appetite for balance. Friends and loved ones drifted away, unable to cope with the intense energy that surrounded her. Moments of deep introspection were overshadowed by periods of profound loneliness. The price of unmatched success was steep. One night, after a particularly challenging show, Oprah found herself wandering the streets, lost in thought. A soft voice called out, guiding her to a discreet door. Above it, a sign read, "Madame Vega, Seer of Secrets." Inside, the warm scent of incense and a comforting aura enveloped her. Madame Vega, with piercing eyes that seemed to look right through her, offered a seat. "The sprite," she began, without preamble, "it's taken a liking to you." Oprah, taken aback, listened intently as Madame Vega explained the nature of the muse, its power, its demands, and the delicate balance it maintained. "There's a ritual," Vega said softly, "a way to transfer the sprite to another. But be warned, its power can be seductive. Few can resist its call." Over the subsequent months, Oprah grappled with her decision. The allure of the sprite's influence was undeniable, but the personal toll was becoming unbearable. She considered the transfer ritual many times, yearning for the relief it promised. Yet, every time she came close to making that decision, something held her back. The power to touch lives, to inspire, and to drive change was a responsibility she felt deeply. The costs, however immense, were hers to bear. One evening, in a moment of quiet reflection, Oprah made her choice. The sprite's power would remain with her. The balance of great success and personal sacrifice was a cross she was willing to bear. As the flashback faded, Clara found herself back in the grove, tears streaming down her face. She looked at Oprah, now seeing the depth of her journey and the weight of her choices. Oprah took a deep breath. "Now you know, Clara. The sprite's power is not to be taken lightly. But together, we'll find a way forward." Chapter 8. The gathering. The grove, once a peaceful sanctuary, was now filled with a bustling energy. Under Oprah's guidance, tents had been erected, tables piled with ancient texts and artifacts, and an inner circle chalked on the ground, symbols from forgotten languages scrawled within. Oprah had summoned a diverse team of experts, spiritualists, historians, and confidants who had stood by her during her own trials with the Spectral sprite. Among them was Elijah, a historian specializing in ancient spiritual entities; Priya, a shaman with a deep understanding of energy transfers; and Naomi, one of Oprah's closest friends and a grounding presence. Clara, feeling both anxious and hopeful, was introduced to the team. She was particularly intrigued by Elijah, who began to share tales of the sprite's past hosts. Over the centuries, Elijah began, adjusting his glasses, the sprite has been drawn to individuals with a unique energy signature, those with the potential to make great impact. He spoke of leaders, artists, and thinkers who had shifted the course of history, their ascent to prominence always meteoric, their personal struggles rarely spoken of. As dusk settled, the group congregated around a large oak table, a single lantern casting flickering shadows. Priya unrolled a parchment, its edges frayed with age. "The sprite," she said, tracing the intricate patterns on the document, "is bound by ancient laws. While its power can be transferred, freeing oneself entirely is a far more complex endeavor." Naomi, her voice calm, shared her memories of Oprah's darkest days. "The balance the sprite seeks. It's not just success offset by personal trials. It demands a deeper equilibrium, a harmony of the soul." The hours slipped by as they debated, hypothesized, and shared knowledge. A plan slowly took shape, a high-risk ritual, drawing from various traditions, to sever Clara's connection with the sprite, sending it into dormancy rather than transferring it to another soul. Priya outlined the specifics. "We'll need rare artifacts, a chalice from the lost city of Atlantis, ash from the phoenix's rebirth, and tears of the moon." While these sounded fantastical, the group knew they were metaphors representing powerful elemental energies, but finding the real-world equivalents would be a challenge in itself. Elijah spoke up. "The alignment of the stars is also crucial. Our best chance is during the upcoming lunar eclipse. It provides a unique energy convergence." Oprah, ever the anchor, looked at Clara. "This is a path fraught with uncertainty, Clara. But it's a chance. We'll do everything in our power to help." Clara nodded, determination evident. "Let's begin the preparations." Over the next few days, the grove transformed into a nexus of activity. Texts were pored over, elements sourced, and the ritual area sanctified. Every detail, no matter how minute, was meticulously prepared. The atmosphere was a mix of anticipation and tension. The night of the eclipse approached swiftly. Clara, supported by a team united in purpose, braced herself for the challenge ahead. The weight of history and hope bore down on them, but they were resolute. The stage was set for a confrontation with the Spectral sprite, a battle not just for Clara's soul, but to rewrite the ancient entity's very nature. Chapter 9. The enemy within. With preparations for the ritual well underway, Clara began to sense an increased unease. At first, she dismissed it as anxiety for the upcoming confrontation, but as the days progressed, she realized that the sprite had grown restless. It was as if it could sense the plans forming against it. One morning, as she tried to access her personal digital archive, she was met with a horrifying discovery. Several of her most hard-hitting, investigative articles, the ones that had earned her accolades and credibility, were inexplicably gone, deleted without a trace. Panic bubbled within her. Those articles had been her foundation, her legacy. Word spread like wildfire through the journalism community. Speculation mounted. Had Clara fabricated her sources? Was her rapid rise to fame too good to be true? Whispers turned into accusations, and soon, Clara's once spotless reputation was smeared with doubt. Simultaneously, tensions began to grow between Oprah and Clara. Oprah started to receive anonymous notes, each painting Clara in a manipulative light, suggesting she had always planned to use the sprite for selfish gain. Clara, on the other hand, began having vivid dreams where Oprah ridiculed her for her naivety, taunting her for thinking she could ever control the sprite. Both women, in their quieter moments, suspected the Spectral sprite's hand in these happenings. The entity had thrived on emotions, drama, and chaos for eons, and it wasn't about to be ousted without a fight. One evening, as Clara sat dejectedly in her study, her phone lit up with an incoming call from an unknown number. Hesitantly, she answered, only to hear a voice dripping with venom. "How does it feel, Clara?" The voice hissed, almost sing-song in its rhythm. "To rise so high, only to fall? The sprite chose you, and yet you betray it. You can't escape its power." Before Clara could muster a response, the line went dead. She knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that the sprite had found a way to communicate its displeasure directly. Clara needed to confront Oprah, to clear the air before the Spectral sprite's manipulations drove an irreversible wedge between them. She decided to meet her at the Grove, the site of their impending battle against the entity. As Clara approached, she found Oprah deep in meditation. Waiting respectfully for her to finish, Clara finally spoke up, "We need to talk." Oprah opened her eyes, a knowing look on her face. "About the sprite's attempts to drive us apart?" Clara nodded, taking a deep breath. "I won't let it succeed. We're in this together." The two women, both strong yet vulnerable in the face of the unseen adversary, joined hands. They needed to stay united, for the enemy wasn't just around them, it was within, and the real battle was just beginning. Chapter 10. Reunion with Madame Vega. The team's preparations were interrupted when Naomi stumbled upon a lead about Madame Vega. An underground spiritual forum was abuzz with rumors of a woman fitting Vega's description, held against her will in a dilapidated mansion on the outskirts of the city. Many believed it to be the doing of a malevolent force, an echo of the Spectral sprite's influence. Recognizing the urgency, Oprah organized a team for a daring rescue mission. Priya, with her knowledge of energy manipulation, Elijah with his historical understanding, and Clara, driven by her quest for freedom, were to infiltrate the mansion and bring Vega to safety. As they approached the mansion, an eerie fog surrounded the premises. The air grew colder, heavier. Priya murmured protective incantations under her breath, forming a protective shield around the group. The mansion, though appearing decrepit from the outside, was a labyrinth within, with hallways that seemed to shift and staircases that led to dead ends. After what felt like hours, they stumbled upon a dimly lit chamber. At its center, suspended within a shimmering energy field, was Madame Vega. Her eyes were shut, but they could see her chest rise and fall. She was alive but entrapped. Clara, recalling her previous meeting with Vega, whispered, "We need to break this energy field without harming her." Elijah, examining the symbols around Vega, identified them as ancient binding runes. These are not just physical restraints. They trap the spirit, rendering the victim powerless. Working together, Priya began chanting, calling upon energies to counteract the binding, while Clara and Elijah, using salt and sage, created a perimeter, ensuring no external interference. The room vibrated, the energy field flickering. With a final, resonant chant from Priya, the energy shattered, releasing Madame Vega, who crumpled to the ground. Clara rushed forward, cradling the older woman in her arms. Slowly, consciousness returned to Vega's eyes. Recovering from her ordeal, back at the safety of the grove, Vega revealed more about the Spectral sprite. "Its power," she rasped, "is ancient, a balance of light and shadow. While its essence can bring great fame, it feeds off chaos, always seeking equilibrium." She eyed Clara solemnly. "You wish to be rid of it, but it won't be easy. The ritual we discussed is a potential solution, but there's another way." All eyes were on Vega as she continued, "Another host can voluntarily take the muse from you, absorbing it into themselves. However, this isn't a simple transfer. The new host must be willing to bear the weight of both the muse's power and its insatiable hunger for equilibrium." The weight of this revelation settled heavily on the group. Who would be willing to take on such a burden? Was there someone out there with the strength and resilience to withstand the sprite's dual nature? Vega, sensing their trepidation, agreed to guide the ritual. "Whether you choose the ritual or find a new host, I will assist you. This entity has toyed with lives for far too long." As preparations resumed, Clara was left with a choice to make. Would they go through with the high-risk ritual, or was there another way? The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but one thing was clear. The battle against the Spectral sprite was reaching its climax. Chapter 11. Ritual Night. The night was chosen carefully. An eclipse paired with a meteor shower, an event that wouldn't repeat for centuries. The grove where the ritual was to take place was buzzing with activity. Crystals were strategically placed, creating a protective barrier. Incense wafted through the air, its scent a mix of lavender and sage. Madame Vega, now in charge, directed the team. Priya was humming a soft tune, her voice harmonizing with the energy around them. Elijah was sketching ancient symbols around the perimeter, each line an added defense. Naomi and Oprah, meanwhile, held Clara's hands, guiding her to the ritual's epicenter. Clara, already weakened from a Spectral sprite's draining influence, looked paler than usual under the moonlight. As the celestial events began, Vega initiated the ritual, chanting verses that seemed to come from another era. The words, although foreign to most, resonated within them, vibrating with power. As the ritual progressed, Clara's condition visibly worsened. Her skin became almost translucent, veins darkened, snaking their way across her form. Sweat beaded on her forehead as her body trembled violently. It was as if the muse inside her was rebelling, refusing to be ousted without a fight. Suddenly, the calm demeanor of the grove shifted. The Spectral sprite, sensing its impending eviction, went on the offensive. A strong gust of wind picked up out of nowhere, extinguishing the candles. The protective crystals, once glowing with ethereal light, were thrust out of the ground, scattering everywhere. Shadows, darker than the night, began to dance erratically. These weren't mere figments of light and dark, but seemed to have a malevolent consciousness. Whispers, too soft to discern yet loud enough to unnerve, echoed through the grove. The very atmosphere felt thick, suffocating, and electric all at once. Madame Vega shouted, trying to be heard above the pandemonium, "We mustn't break the circle. It's our only defense." But as objects began to levitate, whirling around them in a violent frenzy, it seemed the muse's chaotic power might prove too overwhelming. Despair was setting in when, from the edge of the grove, a mysterious figure appeared. Cloaked in white with a hood obscuring their face, the figure moved with purpose, walking straight into the eye of the storm. With a voice that commanded both respect and attention, the stranger began to chant. Their voice harmonized with Madame Vega's, creating a symphony of power that counteracted the Spectral sprite's attempts at disruption. The shadows that had been dancing receded. The objects that had taken flight settled down. The winds calmed, and the suffocating thickness in the atmosphere began to dissipate. The strangers' and Vega's voices rose to a crescendo just as the eclipse reached its zenith. A blinding flash of light engulfed the grove. When it faded, everything was eerily calm. Clara, though still weak, looked relieved, her appearance slowly returning to normal. The Spectral sprite's chaotic grip seemed to be loosened. The group turned their attention to the mysterious stranger, who now lowered their hood to reveal their identity. To everyone's shock, especially Clara's, it was her grandmother, long believed to have passed away. In the ensuing silence, she spoke, her voice gentle yet firm. "The Spectral sprite has been in our family's history for generations. I too had once battled with its allure and chaos. I came when I felt its power awakening again." Oprah, still processing the revelation, managed to say, You knew about the sprite?" The elderly woman nodded, "Yes, and now we have a bigger battle ahead." The ritual was just the beginning. As the group tried to process the night's events, one thing became clear. Their journey with the Spectral sprite was far from over. Chapter 12. The unexpected alley. The air was still thick with tension, the residual energy of the disrupted ritual pulsating through the grove. Clara, although weakened, looked with a mix of curiosity and trepidation at the mysterious figure before her. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The stranger hesitated for a moment before sighing. "My name is Raphael. And I am, or rather was, a previous host of the Spectral sprite." A collective gasp filled the air, but it was Oprah, ever the interviewer, who asked the next question. "Why have you come here?" And how did you free yourself from the sprite's grasp? Raphael's gaze turned distant, memories from another era flooding back. It was a different time. The world was much simpler, yet equally as complex in its challenges. Like you, Clara, I was a writer. My tales spread far and wide. But with every story I penned, the muse's grip grew tighter. And with the success it brought, came despair. He continued, his voice softening. I fell in love. Her name was Isabella. She was the sunshine on my darkest days. But the sprite, it grew jealous. It thrived on chaos, and our love was a direct threat to its existence. One fateful night, it drove me to actions I'd forever regret. I lost her because of it. Clara, eyes moist with empathy, whispered, I'm so sorry. Raphael nodded, the weight of years evident in his demeanor. After that incident, I searched the world for a way to rid myself of the muse. And I found it. But by then, much of my life was spent. The sprite had taken its toll. I lived in isolation, trying to prevent it from finding another host. Madame Vega interjected, but the sprite is crafty. It found its way to Oprah and then to you, Clara. Raphael turned to Clara, his expression resolute. I've come to make amends. To take back the muse. I've lived my life, experienced its highs and crushing lows. You still have much ahead of you. Clara, touched and overwhelmed, tried to protest, but the consequences. ... He gently cut her off. I am prepared. It's my responsibility. A touching moment ensued as Clara approached Raphael, her eyes searching his. Why would you do this for me? Because, Raphael whispered, in you, I see the writer I once was. The dreamer. The lover of stories. And perhaps, in doing this, a part of Isabella's spirit might find peace. Tears streaming down her face, Clara nodded. Very well. Under the guidance of Madame Vega and the spectral illumination of the meteor shower, another ritual began. This one, unlike the last, was serene, filled with an atmosphere of sacrifice and redemption. As the ritual progressed, the aura around Raphael started to glow, while Clara's began dimming to its natural hue. The tug of war between Clara and the muse ended, and slowly, very slowly, the spectral sprite transferred back into its previous host. Once it was over, Raphael, now bearing the full weight of the muse, looked aged, his features more weathered. Yet, his eyes sparkled with a mix of triumph and sadness. It's done, he murmured, his voice hoarse. Clara, free from the muse's influence, rushed to him, enveloping him in a grateful embrace. Thank you, she whispered. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. Live your life, Clara. Write your stories. And remember, not all power is worth its cost. With that, Raphael, with a spectral sprite firmly within him, turned and disappeared into the night, leaving behind a group in awe of the sacrifice they had just witnessed. Chapter 13. Aftermath. The morning sun had never felt so warm on Clara's skin. Waking up free of the spectral sprite's looming presence felt almost surreal. Yet with her newfound freedom came a rush of memories, reminding her of all her past actions under the muse's influence. Every article, every interview, every public interaction, all tinted with the manipulative power of a spectral sprite. And as those memories crowded her, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of guilt. The relationships she'd strained, the bridges she'd burned. It was all too much. She walked to her balcony, looking out at the vast city. The very city that had celebrated her rapid rise, unaware of the dark force propelling her. She felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see Oprah, her eyes filled with understanding. "You're thinking about everything that happened, aren't you?" Oprah said softly. Clara nodded, tears filling her eyes. "How do I make it right, Oprah? How do I apologize for everything I've done?" Oprah gave a melancholic smile. "I've been where you are, Clara. The weight of guilt, the need to make amends. You start by acknowledging it. And then, you do your best to set things right." They shared a moment, two souls connected by a unique experience, finding solace in each other's company. Clara spoke up. "I want to expose the story, Oprah. About the muse, about everything. People should know. They should be warned." Oprah considered this for a moment, then nodded. "If anyone can tell that story, it's you. But be prepared, Clara. There will be those who won't believe you, and others who'll see you differently." "I'm ready for that," Clara said, determination evident in her eyes. Just then, a small envelope slid under Clara's door. She bent down to pick it up, recognizing the handwriting instantly. "It's from Madame Vega," she whispered. The note was short but carried a weight. "Dear Clara, the chains that once bound you are now free. Remember, power is enticing but comes at a price. My journey has always been to guide, not to stay. The world is vast, and many lost souls need guidance. We may or may not meet again. Follow the light within you. Yours in spirit, Madame Vega." Clara clutched the note close, a silent tear rolling down. She realized that while Vega had been instrumental in her journey, the spiritualist had her path to tread. Over the next few weeks, Clara penned down the entire tale, from her meteoric rise to her encounter with a spectral sprite, and finally, the selfless sacrifice of Raphael. The story went viral, with reactions ranging from disbelief to awe. Many criticized Clara, questioning the authenticity of the tale, while others praised her courage. Regardless, Clara stood by her story, using her platform to warn others of the allure and dangers of unchecked power. Oprah, on the other hand, took this time to reflect. The entire experience had rekindled memories she'd tried hard to suppress. With the weight of decades in the media industry and the influence of a spectral sprite in her earlier years, Oprah made a life-altering decision. In a heartfelt broadcast, she announced, "My dear viewers, over the decades, you've been with me through thick and thin. You've been my extended family. But every story has its end, and I've decided it's time for me to step back." There was a global wave of shock. "I'm passing the empire to my dear friend, Gail. She's been by my side, seen the highs and lows, and I trust her to take the legacy forward." Clara, watching the broadcast, couldn't help but shed a tear. The two women, bound by a shared experience, had emerged on the other side stronger and wiser. And as the sun set, casting a warm hue, the world, unaware of the full depth of their journeys, simply continued on, driven by stories and experiences of its inhabitants. Chapter 14. A New Beginning. The lavish studio, once filled with dazzling lights and an air of artificiality, had transformed into a place of genuine conversation and connection. The nameplate outside read, "Clara's Haven." Inside, Clara sat on a cozy set, sipping tea and sharing stories that touched the soul. After her public exposé on a Spectral sprite, Clara had decided to change the direction of her career. No longer were her shows about mindless gossip or trending topics. They now delved into genuine, heartfelt narratives. The latest episode featured individuals who'd had paranormal experiences, sharing their tales not for sensationalism, but for healing and understanding. One evening, after an emotional episode, Clara was approached by a tearful woman. "Your show. It helped me," she whispered. "I thought I was alone, but now I know there are others like me." It was moments like these that Clara realized the impact of her work. Meanwhile, away from the spotlight and the buzzing city, Oprah found herself amidst the tranquil Himalayas. She had taken a sabbatical to travel, seeking solace and reflection after the tumultuous events. The majestic mountains, pristine rivers, and serene monasteries provided the perfect backdrop for her introspection. As she meditated alongside monks, Oprah felt a connection to something bigger than herself. She realized that while a Spectral sprite had played a significant part in her past, it was the choices she'd made afterward that defined her. The muse might have given her a platform, but it was her authenticity and warmth that had genuinely connected with people. Back in the States, inspired by her personal journey and the myriad stories she came across, Clara set up a foundation, the Luminous Path. It aimed to provide support, both psychological and spiritual, to individuals affected by paranormal entities. From therapy sessions to spiritual cleansing rituals, the Luminous Path became a beacon of hope for many. However, not everyone saw it that way. Mainstream scientists and skeptics labeled it as a hub for the delusional. Despite Clara's first-hand account, the world remained largely skeptical about the existence of a Spectral sprite and other paranormal beings. Debates raged on TV shows, podcasts, and social media. Was Clara's story a masterfully crafted publicity stunt or a genuine account of the supernatural? But Clara remained unfazed by the critics. She knew her truth and continued her mission to help others find theirs. Letters poured into her foundation daily, with people from all walks of life sharing their experiences, seeking guidance, or simply thanking her for shedding light on a topic long shrouded in mystery. One such letter stood out, written in elegant handwriting on an old parchment. It was from Oprah. "Dear Clara, the mountains have given me a peace I never thought I'd find. But as I sit here amidst nature's grandeur, my thoughts often drift to our shared journey. Your foundation is a testament to your resilience and strength. The world may debate, question, or even mock, but remember, truth has a way of revealing itself, even if it takes time. Continue shining your light. Perhaps one day, our paths will cross again." With warmth and respect, Oprah. The two women, worlds apart yet bound by an experience beyond comprehension, found strength in their past. They realized that while they couldn't change the events that had transpired, they could choose how to move forward. And as the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, both Clara and Oprah, with renewed vigor and purpose, stepped into the next chapter of their lives. Chapter 15. Legacy. The wind rustled through the leaves as visitors strolled through Serenity Park. In its heart stood a statue of a man, his face etched with an expression of quiet determination. The inscription at the base read, "To the unsung hero who sacrificed for the greater good." This was the memorial for the stranger, the previous host of a Spectral sprite, who had taken back the muse to free Clara. Over time, his identity remained a mystery, but his tale of sacrifice became legendary. Parents narrated his story to their children as a testament to the human spirit's resilience and the lengths one would go to protect another. As for Clara, her experiences gave her a wealth of insight, depth, and wisdom. She chose to channel these emotions into words, penning a memoir titled Shadows and Light: My Dance with a Spectral Sprite. The book gave a detailed account of her journey, from the ambitious young journalist who sought power to the humbled woman who learned the price of unchecked ambition. In her memoir, Clara wrote, "There's a seductive allure to power. It promises you the world, but it doesn't tell you about the chains that come with it. I learned the hard way that not all that glitters is gold. Sometimes, it's the shimmer of a deceptive trap." The book became an instant bestseller. Readers from around the globe wrote to Clara, sharing how her story had touched them, made them reflect on their life choices, and taught them the importance of self-awareness and restraint. Far from the hustle and bustle of urban life, Oprah had found a haven in a quaint village in Tuscany. The rolling hills, the vast vineyards, and the golden sunsets gave her a sense of peace she had longed for. She had traded her glamorous gowns and high heels for simple dresses and bare feet. Here, Oprah wasn't the media mogul. She was just another villager, tending to her garden and enjoying homemade wine. However, the world hadn't forgotten Oprah. Her story with a spectral sprite, combined with her illustrious career, made her a figure of admiration, inspiration, and, for some, caution. Young journalists and media students studied her life, drawing lessons about the ethics of journalism, the responsibilities of a public figure, and the dangers of seeking power without understanding its implications. On a quiet evening, as the sun painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Oprah sat on her porch, a letter from Clara in her hands. They had kept in touch, their bond forged in the fires of shared adversity. The letter read, "Dear Oprah, your journey has taught me so much. Not just about the world of journalism, but about life itself. Our experience with the Spectral Sprite was a testament to the human spirit's strength. But more importantly, it taught me about the perils of unchecked ambition. I hope our story serves as a reminder for generations to come." As the letter concluded, Oprah looked out at the horizon, her heart filled with a mix of nostalgia, gratitude, and contentment. She whispered to the winds, "May our tale be a beacon, warning souls about the allure of power without purpose." And so, as years turned into decades, the tale of a Spectral Sprite, Clara, and Oprah became a legend. It served as a cautionary tale, a story that spoke of ambition, sacrifice, redemption, and the timeless lesson that power, when not tethered to purpose and understanding, could lead one down a treacherous path. If you have enjoyed our Paranormal Sprite Muse scary story, please visit us at Paranormal Untold Stories. Come to listen to more of our scary stories collection. Paranormal Untold Stories encourages you to contact us if you have your own untold story that you would like our professionals team to put online as a scary story. Thank you. Please follow our YouTube channel, Paranormal Untold Stories, and encourage others to do the same. Paranormal Untold Stories.